Hey guys, Jim Vinosky with Manufacturing Talks. Something as simple as call-ins at a manufacturing plant seems like no big deal, right? And yet, today I'm talking to Sheila Stafford. She co-founded and is CEO of a company called TeamSense, and they realized it is a big deal, and there are actually a lot of problems they can solve with it, and that's what they're doing. So Sheila is here to tell us all about what TeamSense does to streamline and make easier not just the call-in process, but lots of employee relation aspects to your manufacturing operation. So please stay tuned. She'll be on here with us in just a few minutes here on Manufacturing Talks.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Jim Vinosky with Manufacturing Talks. Welcome back. Have a great show for you today. We've got a company called TeamSense, and Sheila Stafford is their co-founder and CEO joining me to talk about that company today. Welcome, Sheila.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I think you've got a great story, so I'm really looking forward to diving in. But before we talk about your company, we got to hear about you. Tell us about yourself and how you got doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so, my passion for manufacturing and engineering really began in high school. I was really lucky to have opportunity with a program that the Ford Academy of Manufacturing Sciences, and there they awarded high schoolers internships into the Ford kind of, we'll say, world over the summer. And so as a high schooler, I got to experience working at the Ford stamping plant in Buffalo, New York. And as a part of that experience, we went up to the Oakville assembly plant to see kind of the parts that we were stamping out go into full assembly. And when I got to that assembly plant, I was in awe of like, oh my God, this is just so cool. And so that really fueled, just my interest and excitement. And I decided to become an engineer. I've got my mechanical engineering degree down at Duke University. And after Duke was, just super attracted to the automotive industry. And I landed actually at General Motors is where I got my start as a manufacturing engineer. And so kind of continued that passion. Since then, I view my career as having experience in nearly every line of the P&L. I've led teams at Whirlpool Corporation, at General Motors, as I mentioned, Fluke and Fortive. And then all of that experience kind of culminated to leading me to founding TeamSense.
Good deal. I have to mention when we get off of here before we hang up, we got to talk about Buffalo because I was just out there.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
It's gone through such a transformation.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty impressive. Yeah.
That's part of what we'll talk about because it's been a while since I was there. But yeah, so that's separate. But so TeamSense, tell us about the company you helped found.
Yeah, so TeamSense is a digital connection to frontline workers, specifically in manufacturing and logistics. And the insight here is that, technology innovation has moved so fast for, workers that typically sit at an office desk. I think there's a stat that of worker productivity software in the last 10 years, 90% of venture investments have gone to folks that are, sitting at an office, white collar workers, where if you look at actually the jobs in the United States, the majority of the jobs are frontline workers. And so there's this big gap. And in particular, that digital connection with frontline workers is really unique because they don't have access to a company computer. They don't have access to a company phone. They otherwise are, uniquely averse to company sponsors apps. And so it makes it really difficult to engage and enable them. And so when COVID hit, I kind of had this aha moment of like, holy smokes, like COVID is going to radically change the way that companies communicate and engage with these workers. And initially the thought process was, if I can leverage a workflow that companies, is a required workflow that reaches 100% of the workforce, I could then use that same connection to engage and enable them in different ways where they're not, set up to do so today. And so we were basically a COVID baby, saw a ton of success because we have this app-free approach. And so the way TeamSense works is frontline workers actually engage with us with text message, which is really convenient because everybody knows how to text. It works across all kinds of platforms. Employers or employees just kind of text with TeamSense, and then we can respond with automated workflows. And so this kind of mantra of initially starting as COVID and finding this, daily workflow that helped keep workers safe to drive that connection worked and kind of played out as planned. We landed big customers right away. So within, just a couple of weeks of founding the company, we had names, on our roster like Pella Windows and Sloan Valve Company and Hunter Douglas Blind Company, and really saw like, oh, I think we're onto something here. Obviously, as COVID kind of waned, we needed a new workflow that would be kind of that land and that Trojan horse to establishing that digital connection. And that naturally was attendance management. Attendance management offers a lot of that same benefits in that it's a mandatory workflow. It reaches 100% of the population. It's a really kind of, I'll call it a sandpaper process today. Like it impacts everybody and nobody likes the existing process. And so we fix all of that. And then by doing so, establish a connection that companies leverage to engage and enable their employees in new and different ways.
So I find it really fascinating because, to be honest, when I first heard about you guys, I thought, everybody has a phone. How can this be a deal? And then as I dug in a little deeper and saw some of the rationale that you had on your website and some of the information I had, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, wait a minute. Yeah, I've experienced that personally. And I'm sure anyone in the manufacturing world would have that same initial reaction and then realization that, yeah, actually, this is a problem.
Yeah, it's funny. Most of the time, we call ourselves like a hard fact problem. Most of the time when folks come in and start engaging with TeamSense, they have found us. So a lot of our deals are inbound where finally somebody is just fed up and they're like, God, this is like the 21st century. Like there's got to be a better way. And then they hit Google and they find us and they're literally like, I have been waiting for you for such a long time. And it's kind of fascinating that this problem still exists in this way. Yeah. But once we get our name out there, it's incredible to see. And like, the results are, in like, if you go on our website, there's a ton of webinars of companies that have just really transformed both their attendance management policy. Great. Like that gets us in the door. You take this process that's like really archaic and, it has, manual errors. It has room for bias. It has room for potential like legal issues. It's got, employee, we'll say engagement and impacts on it. Like all of these big hairy things, like smooth that out. And then it's like, take a breath. Like now what else can we do? Just like a really cool opportunity to transform our customers' businesses for sure.
Well, and clearly getting big customers 2 weeks in, kind of a testimonial to the need.
Right.
So you guys are built for manufacturing. Talk about that. So what is it specific about manufacturing that makes it an even bigger deal there? Or here, I guess I should say.
Yeah, like having my background be in and around manufacturing for over 20 years, like I understand that the workers are different. They're different than hourly workers. Like I tend to talk to them or talk to like investors, for example, or folks not familiar with manufacturing about like a spectrum of workers. You've got kind of folks that are in manufacturing where these jobs are, careers, right? Like they're coming in and they're looking to grow their career over time versus on the other end of the spectrum, you've got kind of food service and retail where these are just jobs. And like across that spectrum, there's different needs within those workers. There's also in manufacturing, a lot of the workers come in and may be represented by unions. And so you've got some complexity with CBAs and meeting those requirements. Yep. And so thinking about TeamSense, like we built it for the ground up, like understanding these complexities and meeting those needs where they are. I think the biggest kind of flagship one is that we are not an app. There's no need for the employee to download anything on their phone. There's no way for us to track them. And so I've been on that end of asking an employee to download a company-sponsored app on their personal phone that we don't pay for. And having had that experience was like, there is no way that that's going to happen. Like you might get a percentage. I think, talking to our customers, the highest percentage I've seen of adoption of an app, like you're doing really well if you can get, I don't know, like 40 to 50% of your population to download it.
Yep.
You're like, great, that's awesome. Like, what do you do for your other 50%? Like, they just don't have a call off process. They don't have communication. Like,
Right.
it's not feasible. And so, first and foremost is like having the no app. And then the nuances are in the flexibility. So, one of our customers, for example, has folks that are working at the same factory side by side, some of which are represented by unions, some of which are not. TeamSense can delineate who is who and then send them different workflows based on whether they're represented by a union or not. And so just understanding these nuances and flexibility is what makes us purposely built for manufacturing. I think the other element is because we're so narrow in our focus, our like entire product roadmap and innovation that we're driving every day is something that all of our customers can use. It's whether or not they want to pick up that and use it and whether or not it fits them. But they'll always look at it and be like, oh, that is interesting, right? Because a lot of manufacturers are facing the same problems. And so it offers them a really unique opportunity to partner with somebody who truly understands their needs and is truly innovating in things that can be useful for them moving forward versus a horizontal software where it's just like, okay, you're part of the bigger piece. Like you're not going to move a Workday or an ADP to do something like uniquely just for manufacturing because of the way that they go to market.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive in a little more. We've covered that. Yeah. Generally speaking, manufacturers, when they hear about this, understand that this is a problem they've dealt with and see the need and the potential solution. What are the big call-in and communication difficulties that TeamSense tackles?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. So first and
I bet.
foremost is removing kind of the manual process and driving everybody to the same process. So most of the time when we come in, even like massive companies, like the biggest brands, like if you name like the top 5 brands in the world, even like we've talked to them, they've been in our funnel. Some of them are our customers and we can't say their logos, but they still have this problem. It's insane where employees either, call their supervisor, text the supervisor, call the 1-800 number, call the guard shack, email, and there's all these different inbound ways for the employees to let the company know that they're off. But then it relies on the supervisor to then manually put those into the HRIS system to collect all of those from different locations. If it's a call-in line, we're having problems with, folks that have the same name, right? There's a lot of times in manufacturing, there's a lot of like family lines where, different family members work at the factory for years. Many of them have very similar names or even the same name, and understanding who's who and kind of delineating becomes a problem when you're just leaving a message, I think. And so really identifying the specific employee, giving them a streamlined way of getting the data into the system, automating the data into the system is kind of first and foremost the initial problem that we solve. The next thing that we move to is really, because we're a software, we could do lots of really cool things. So when employees interact with us, we've got some AI on the front end. They can interact with us in their native language. And so oftentimes they will text us that they're ready to call off, or I'm sick, or my kid is sick. In their native language, and we will send them down their workflow in their native language. And so they're calling off kind of in a language that they feel comfortable with, they're understanding. And so that's helpful for a lot of manufacturers as well. The next is really kind of policy adherence. And so, getting employees to then select the nature of their absences takes that burden off of the manager. And so I give an example a lot of times where somebody's calling off, and like if it's a traditional process, they're leaving a message for their supervisor and they're like, hey, it's Sheila, like I'm not really feeling that well and my son is sick and I need to take him to a doctor and I can't really get childcare. I'm just unable to come in. And I hang up the phone. Well, now the supervisor's stuck with coding that absence. Like, was that because Sheila's sick? Because I did say I'm not feeling well. Or is that because she couldn't get childcare? And sometimes, depending on the complexity of the policy, those are 2 different buckets and have 2 different kind of occurrence points that go with it. And so by giving that choice to the employee and kind of being out there and saying, you choose what it is, that then helps streamline the process. The next step is that because we're a software, we actually grab their attendance history and their points history and show it to them before they call off. And so this is where we start really driving bottom line results for our customers. And so we'll say, hey, Sheila, you've been late 3 times. You've been out twice. You've got 5 points. At 7 points, you get a verbal warning. And at 9 points, you get terminated. Do you still want to call off? And what we see is kind of like, it's very common in e-commerce to talk about a cart abandonment metric. What we see is like an abandonment metric where employees now have data transparency. They know exactly where they are. And it turns out they're like everyone else. Like when they have good data, they make better decisions. And so we see employees actually opt to come in. And so after implementation of TeamSense, we start to see actually a reduction in absenteeism, which is where we drive just incredible ROI for our customers long term.
Yep.
And then beyond that, once they have the digital connection, they start to engage and enable them in different ways. And so now that you've got this digital connection, you can send down, workflows that help you collect data in structured ways. And so some of our customers have workflows related to something very simple, like what is your shirt size? Because we're doing a company picnic and everybody gets, new t-shirts. It's something really important. One of our customers was in the eye of Hurricane Idalia. They knew that it was going to make landfall and it was going to impact their employees. They sent everyone home. The hurricane came through, and then within TeamSense, they sent down a workflow that asked, like, are you safe? Do you have power? Do you have food? Did you lose any personal property in the hurricane? And within 4 hours of that hurricane making landfall, they knew that 2 of their employees actually lost their homes.
Oh, wow.
And they were able to direct company resources to those 2 employees. And so in talking with the customer there, I asked them, like, hey, what did you do before TeamSense? And they're like, oh my God, like, they're in Florida, hurricanes are a thing. They're like, we had to use call trees. They're like, can you imagine a call tree running through Florida, like after
During
a hurricane? Right? Like it's just not going to happen. And like they couldn't make timely decisions. And so the cool part is like once you've got this digital connection, like, am I doing that? Like, no, like our software is enabling incredible humans to do incredible things that they otherwise couldn't before because of the timeliness of the situation.
Yep.
And so what they're seeing over longer terms is this like engagement coming back. Like people came back and they're like, wow, like, thank you for sending that message. Like you're showing that you actually care. And the thing was like the companies already have these people. They just need the tools in order to reach the workers to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've approached this initially from what it delivers to the companies, which is obviously huge, but equally it's delivering value to the employees, the workers too.
100%. I mean, they appreciate for sure the fact that the process is streamlined. They appreciate that, they don't need to talk to a human to call off. Like one of these things that we've uncovered is this like call off anxiety of like, oh, like, what are they going to think when I tell them I'm unable to come in because, my grandmother died, or like, I don't really want to talk about it. Or, there's a lot of emotion tied to that and really kind of that ability of like, that autonomy to do that and feel trusted. And so I think, taking a rock off their wagon from that perspective is, first and foremost. But then once you start getting into the digital connection and engagement, it really opens up. A couple other things that we do is, the attendance policy is really unique because it gives us this semi-frequent interaction with the employees that make sure that we have up-to-date contact information. Mm-hmm. Our database tells us that about 25% of the population phone number at a given company will churn over the course of the year.
Sure.
And so it's really hard for HR to kind of keep the phone number accurate, but because we have this semi-frequent interaction, our phone numbers are always most accurate across the company. From there, we allow them or enable companies to do mass communication. And so they can send out messages like, hey, this is what's happening within the company. Don't forget, there's a town hall on Friday. Congratulations on a great quarter. We over-delivered our production numbers, things like that. They can send out and schedule those to kind of come out to the employees at proper times. Yep. The other thing that we do is an employee portal, and this is where it starts getting really cool. And so a lot of companies will put important links into the employee portal, and that's where employees can kind of self-serve into the employee resources. And if you think back to like why we founded the company, these employees don't have access to a computer, they don't have a company phone, they otherwise don't have this digital connection. And so just having kind of, here's a reminder of where you can find your benefits. Here's a reminder of our employee handbook. Here's some engagement events that we have going on. Here's a link to careers, are some of the most common things that we see within that portal. Just enables them to get that information when they want. Like, that's not something that's coming down from the company, but something that's self-serve, kind of on their terms. And so starting to see a ton of appreciation and engagement for just having that data at their fingertips versus how are they doing it today? It's like, oh, when you log in, go to the kiosk, or like, I printed out the handbook for you during your onboarding. Don't you remember getting that? And so it's been really fun, kind of bringing just modern day conveniences in a way that meets the employees where they are.
Yeah. Well, and you and I had talked previously about the workforce development need, particularly in manufacturing, where we don't have the numbers out there, and we need to be doing everything we can to bring more people to our world, and making jobs easier and more attractive is a piece of that. And that's a huge part of what you're doing here. So I applaud you for that.
100%. Some of our customers have touted TeamSense as one of those things that they use to tell employees, A, we care, and B, we're tech forward compared to many others. And that's something that, employees that have many options to choose on, like, what company they're going to go work for if they're, skilled in this area, look for as, their preferred employer for sure.
Yeah. Now, clearly you've been in demand, but I'm sure you're also out there trying to drum up new business. Have you run into people who are old school who say, we appreciate what you have, but honestly, what we're doing today works fine? And what would you say to folks kind of in that past mode?
Yeah, we've had really, really good fortune in that, when you think about a software company, one of the things that you track from a KPI standpoint is net revenue retention, which is, what is your renewal and your customers are expanding. And our net revenue retention is very, very high. Like, it's in the world-class range when you look at kind of SaaS businesses, which tells me that, like, hey, we are delivering value. We're doing what we're saying we're going to do, so much so that the accounts are expanding and they're telling other sites and we're going, which is awesome. We also look at our churn data on, like, companies that say, like, okay, like, this was great and it wasn't for us. And we've only churned, I can count on one hand the number of customers that over the entire life of the business that have been, ICP, so like our manufacturing logistics, that decided it wasn't for them. One of which was a smaller scale warehousing operation. And their response was, you just make it too easy to call off. And I think that our employees are taking advantage of that. And you're like, like, okay. And I think there is that still that, mentality there of, thinking that employees are going to take advantage of the system. And I don't know that making it harder to call off is the right solution for them, but like, kind of respected there's a bigger problem there. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, I don't know that, the bigger companies or folks that are more tech forward would have that same point of view. Yep. The other things that I tell them is, the innovation of what's coming down the line. Like, we're in a really unique position in that, like, we have this digital connection with frontline workers. They're, companies are constantly looking for ways to better engage and enable them, and kind of compare that with what's happening on the AI side of things. It's really, really exciting, like, what we can do. And so we've got a proof of concept that we're running with AI that really helps these employees get information very, very quickly. That's very, very personalized to them. Because the other thing that's unique about us is that we know who the employees are, like, when they reach out to us. And so, they can just text us and say, how many hours of vacation do I have banked? And because we're already linked with deep integrations in the HRIS system, we can simply come back and say, oh, Jim, you've got 8 hours of vacation banked. Then you could say, oh, like, what is my schedule for the next week? Like, we can reach in and, like, be able to respond. And so you think about having kind of an AI assistant that's personalized for the frontline worker at your fingertips with just a text message is what's coming down the line. And so the folks early on that kind of dismiss it as like, oh, this is an attendance thing, for me, they're missing the point. Like attendance is a Trojan horse to the digital connection that everybody needs. And you have to meet your employees where they are. Like they are not going to, change and say like, oh, okay, now I'm going to download that app. Like you really convinced me to put that on my personal phone. And oh, by the way, like I am 100% convinced that you're tracking me.
Exactly.
Because like these big companies have, like when I was trying to ask them, like we would say, no, we're not tracking you. Like we don't have any time to do that. Like, are you kidding me? And then legal comes in with the bring your own device policy. And they're like, well, if they're going to use their own device, like you got to have them sign this because if there's a breach, like, and like in there, it's like, we can take your phone. We can look at your records. If you use it for your personal, and you're like, anyway, so like I've experienced all that. And so I think the people that kind of push back are missing the broader picture of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, got it. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that folks out there ought to know about TeamSense?
I think it's just a really, really exciting time to be in manufacturing, right? I think, if you look at the US and kind of the history, like COVID was hard. Like it was hard on all of us and everyone was essential workers and you're kind of like trying to figure out like, how do you do this? But like we've made it through that. And like, as a result, like it is, manufacturing's time to shine. Like we're getting the love that, kind of waned over the last few years. And so, I know that it can be tiring. I know that, pushing those end of month production and, can be exhausting, but like take a step back and look like, wow, like what a fun and exciting time to be a part of the manufacturing world. And, I'm just so excited to be kind of, at the precipice of right place, right time. We've got this incredible software. We've got AI. We've got, a workforce that needs tools to be more productive with fewer workers. And it's just an exciting time to be here.
For sure. And well said. What are the next big opportunities for you guys then?
Yeah, so we're really working on bringing in that AI personal assistant. I think that's the biggest thing that we can offer for our customers, in particular the frontline workers, and getting them information as quickly as possible. One of the things that I measure with my product team is opposite of what a lot of software companies these days measure, which is, a lot of software companies are like trying to get attention and engagement from the employees or from their users of like, oh, how much time did they spend within our app? And like, more time, the better. I am the exact opposite of like, get these people what they need as quickly as possible and get them out as quickly as possible. And so that is kind of our overarching product mission. That is what we're focused on across the board. And so AI is coming in hot for us, as well as really taking kind of structured data flows. And so as I go in and like, I'm actually in a hotel right now in Phoenix doing on-site visits. And I go in and I look at, what are their paper processes that they're executing kind of within HR, within production, within EH&S that we can automate through our digital forms. And so that's the next thing coming is, more automation on these paper processes. So if you think about, safety incident reports, you think about engineering change orders, you think about production information, and you think about other like HR benefits information, things like that are all kind of being done via paper. It's like, how do we digitize that and make that available at their fingertips?
Okay. So you got plenty going on.
Plenty going on, but wow, what an exciting time.
For sure. Good deal. Well, Sheila Stafford, thanks so much for being with us on Manufacturing Talks.
It was such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I found it inspirational. I love folks who really bring solutions to the people who are doing the real jobs, and that's the frontline workers. The rest of us are just support, right? So kudos on that.
100%. I appreciate it.
And so thanks to Sheila. Thanks also to all of you out there. You're why we're here. We're here every Tuesday. As I said, this was really inspirational for me. I hope you found it the same. I can't promise every episode will be as inspirational, but everyone is going to be at least a little inspirational. So come back next Tuesday and we'll be here. Thanks again. So long from Manufacturing Talks.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.